Wananiambia hii nyumba haina mwanaume. Ukipata mwanaume tunachimba.
Another night of long knives leaves 21 dead in Tana River and Lamu.
It was written in white chalk. 1. Raila Tosha. MRC mnalala. Waislamu ardhi zenyu zinanyakuliwa. Amkeni mpigani.
Ya kwamba tutaweka amani. Hata hawa wakora wamesema watarudi. Hawatarudi. Tutapatana na wao.
MRC blamed for attacks as Ruto gives a 48-hour ultimatum to catch killers.
Wanasema Dipunda amechoka. Sipunda amechoka.
Watu wamepata na homa ya matumbo. Wakisikia Raila na Kalonzo atangula hawalali.
CORD winds up countrywide rallies in Machakos on Saba Saba Eve. And also in this bulletin, Kenya's stand steals the show as the Smithsonian Festival draws to a close.
KTN Weekend Prime with Yvonne Okwara.
Welcome to the program this 6th day of July 2014. Now, it is yet another dark Sunday for Kenya as it mourns the loss of 21 more people in 2 simultaneous attacks across 2 counties in 2 hitherto little-known towns, Gamba in Tana River County and Hindi in Lamu County. The macabre murders are reminiscent of those perpetrated in Mpeketoni just last month, with one of them starting at a police station. It also is the eve of a day of political reckoning, bearing the name of a past signpost of Kenya's history, Saba Saba. But is this Saba Saba cut from the same circumstances as that which midwifed multipartism in Kenya? Our coverage, Saba Saba, seeks to settle some of these questions with the perspective of the diplomatic corps as told by our studio guest, Ambassador Jacques Peterloo, our comprehensive coverage and a great debate ahead on Checkpoint. But even in times like these, it's always good to laugh at yourself. Wilson Boer's got just the ticket with this week's edition of Mock the Week. I'm Yvonne Okwara. Good evening and welcome. Let's begin with the latest from Tana River County and Lamu, the counties that are home to yet more bloodshed perpetrated by people the government says have either a political, religious or land motive in perpetrating these attacks. Between 20 and 30 attackers hit the Gamba police station at about 9:30 p.m. last night, killing a police officer, individuals in custody of the police and area residents. Now in all, 9 people died in that attack. At about the same time, a similar attack was unfolding 50 kilometers away in Hindi, Lamu County. Here, the attackers burnt houses, tied some of their victims' hands behind their backs, and either shot them at point blank range, or hacked them to death. 12 people were murdered there. The attacks add to a wider death toll as witnessed in Mpeketoni, Kibaoni and Poromoko in Lamu County. 65 people were killed in those attacks last month. Let's now link you up with Ferdinand Omundi, who's our senior coast reporter, and he has traveled to the region to bring us a live update now on phone. Ferdinand, thanks for joining us this evening. What is the situation like at this hour?
Good evening, Yvonne. Well, we've been driving through Tana River and Lamu counties, beginning from Witu, I beg your pardon. And what we have seen is people now walking by the roadside, especially the men carrying weapons, good weapons, anything from bows, arrows, and machetes. We tried to speak to some of them, especially in the area of Kibaoni, which was one of the places which was attacked 2 weeks ago in the first attack. And they're saying that they are not now taking anything for granted. they are guarding themselves. There's a lot of fear and anxiety for not knowing what is going to happen overnight, because there have been a lot of assurances about matters being brought under control. And then what happened? And then this time around, a police station was attacked. I was at Gamba police station itself, where some of the inmates, there are some of those who survived, and they were telling me that they also needed to be transferred from that place because a policeman was killed, and five of the other inmates also killed last night. So they had sought transfer from that cell, but by the time I left, about 6, that had not happened. So a lot of anxiety as a result of the attacks, which is understandable.
All right, Ferdinand, anxiety, as you mentioned, and some of them now taking security into their own matters. What is the security operation like, the boots on the ground, so to speak?
Up to about 5 p.m., there were detectives around Gamba police station trying to find the answers. They questioned the driver of the lorry which was commandeered. If you're not aware, there was a lorry, the 3 boys who were killed. The driver of that lorry was actually ordered, according to him, to transport them away from Gamba into some unspecified location where they disembarked. So it's one of those people being questioned. There's also been a lot of police officers and also members of the NIS and also the Criminal Investigation Department, the scenes of crime in both scenes, trying to find out the answers. Right now, I am around Peketoni. There, I've noticed there's also a heightened patrol. At least I've seen a few cars passing here and there. And I've also seen a few patrol cars, especially in the areas of Kiboni, where there are those persons who are walking around with the weapons. They're saying they're trying to patrol to make sure nothing happens tonight, and also to make sure that it does not boil over into another situation. So there's that aspect of security, looking into making sure that there's law and order, and the people themselves saying, no, we want to take care of this of ourselves this time around.
All right, thank you very much for that, Ferdinand. And of course, we are expecting a more comprehensive story from you, which is coming up in just a moment. But thank you, Ferdinand, for that update, and do stay safe there. Okay, so let's now have Deputy President William Ruto, who was on a tour of the region. When visiting Hindi after the attacks, he gave local security operatives 48 hours to catch those responsible, and Deputy Inspector General Grace Kaindi linking the attacks to the Mombasa Republican Council. Now, after investigators found items that they believed were proof of a political link to these attacks. Let's have that now.
They cannot blackmail us using criminal elements in our country to blackmail us into a situation that we do not understand. If you are unable to wait for the next general election, you are in a hurry, you want to make the country ungovernable so that you can get into office through the back door, that will not happen in Kenya.
Yesterday, 5th of July 2014, at around 11 p.m. at Gamba area in Tana Delta, an armed group of about 30 to 50 people attacked police officers who were manning Gamba police station. There was a fierce shootout, and one group of the attackers sneaked and killed 5 people who were being held in one of the cells. And one police officer died while engaging the attackers, and 2 others received injuries.
Right, now we just spoke to Ferdinand Omondi on phone a while ago, who is on the ground in Gamba. Let's now have him paint a picture for us for this yet another massacre that took place in Lamu.
At the walls here, these are the bullet holes to signify or to prove that indeed bullets were used. There's a lot of blood spattered here on the ground. At least 1 policeman was killed here and another was injured. There's a lot of blood splattered right here at the door. Some of the windows are shattered as well. And as we move forward along the floor, the corridor here, there's a stream of blood. So the attacks must have begun from the cells. Somebody got injured from there and who was dragged out. We can see pieces of clothing here. Do not know whether they stripped some of them, and yet more there's actually blood and bone, so somebody must have been killed immediately from here. Now this is the cell that was broken open.
Sasa nilisikia tu wakati mmoja alikuja kutoa hawa mabusu huku wakaua watano. Ndio, lakini ilikuwa uwezi kutoka nje kwa maana risasi ilikuwa nalia zaidi.
Now the lady isn't the only survivor. To my left is another cell that is still safely locked, and I also understand these were some of the inmates who survived the attack. The attackers apparently did not manage to break in here, so we're going to try and see if we can get any information from them. Habari zenu bwana?
Tumevamia usiku hapo saa 6. Wamechapa sana, jamaa kavunja mlango kule, kaanza kuweka watu chini pale. Na wakachinja, kapiga marisasi, kaua, wakaja hapa atakuvunja hapa nyumba ni vile wameshindwa hapo mlango wetu. Kwa hivyo mimi bwana mtagarseni bwana. Mtweka hapa. Mimi nilikuwa nataka saa leo tuondoe list tupate seli nyingine nzuri hapa bwana, ulinzi hapa ni mdogo. Kama askari wamekimbia. Mtu kama chambo hapa ndani sasa.
I have with me the driver of the lorry which was commandeered, and he will perhaps give us more details of an insight on the attackers. Jamaa unaitwa nani?
Bishar Hassan Muhammad.
Hassan, hebu tueleze jinsi ilivyokuwa.
Jinsi ilikuwa jana, alikuwa saa 4 hivi. Mkuta hiyo burial. Tumekuta hawa al-Shabaab. Sasa sisi nadhani hawa ni askari, kumbe askari ni al-Shabaab. Tumesimama, kijana tandibia ameshuka mimi naenda odekishwe. Noted. Amesema wewe weka mkono chini. Tumeweka mkono chini. Sawa. Mkuja kwangu, ameniambia shuka chini. Mshuka. Msema hii yote lalili chini. Tumalala.
Behind me is a lorry that was burned right here at Gama Police Station to give a signal that the attackers were not only seeking to kill but also to destroy. This other lorry here is the one which is said to have been commandeered by the attackers, numbering at least 50. This is where they picked the 3 persons, 2 town boys and a passenger, shot them dead before commandeering the driver to take them to an unknown location where they disembarked and took off into the darkness. Security organs are now trying to understand exactly the motives behind these attacks, as taking inmates out of a cell and shooting them dead is unprecedented in the history of Kenyan attacks. Once more, the coast region is concerned about what has happened to them, and more questions are arising. Only 3 weeks ago, at least 65 people were killed in Peketoni, and in an attack whose answers are yet to be found, and this only compounds the whole equation, where the government stated that the first attack was politically motivated. This time round, what happened, who did it, and why? Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Gamba, in the county of Tana River.
Let's move to matters politics now. The Coalition for Reforms and Democracy held its last rally ahead of tomorrow's Saba Saba rally. Court leaders addressed a rally in Machakos, insisting they will not give up their call for national dialogue. They say they will not be cowed by the government's warning that they will be held personally responsible for any chaos or utterances. Here's Rita Tinina with that report.
On the eve of CORD's Saba Saba rally, the coalition was at the Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos for the last rally ahead of the Uhuru Park meeting.
Leo ni tarehe 6. Na sisi ni dada ya Saba. Tutaenda Uhuru Park. Tutaongea. Tutakubaliana. Tutasikizana.
The coalition says the Saba Saba rally is a direct response to the government's failure to convene national dialogue.
Why is it, I ask, why is it that any leader worth the suit would want to be averse to dialogue?
CORD leaders insist the government must meet its demands, including the disbandment of the IEBC, tackle corruption, insecurity, the high cost of living, and tribalism.
Sifunda amechoka. Sifunda amechoka. Waswahili wanasema ati kibebasho kikivuja nafuu kwa mchukuzi. Sasa hii mzigo ya paa yapunguze, sivyo? Fisi alikuwa anafukuza swara. Swara akapita kwa jiwe kubwa akatoroka. Fisa alipofika hapo akauliza jiwe, umeona swara akipita hapa? Jiwe likanyamaza. Akauliza mara pili, mara tatu. Baadaye akamwambia jiwe, hata usiponijibu umeniusikia. Na tunataka kuambia wale watu wa Jubilee, hata wasipotujibu wametusikia.
The government has assured adequate security for the Saba Saba rally, but warned that code principals will be held personally responsible for any disturbances from the rally.
Sisi tunawaambia hatuwezi kutishikwa sisi. Wanasema wameleta polisi 15,000. Mahali tumeenda hatuhitaji polisi. Wananchi ni polisi ya kutosha.
Niwekwe jela, sitarudi nyuma. Niwekwe jela, sitarudi. Hata wao waseme, hata wao waseme, hata wao waseme, sisa tutarudi nyuma.
Following a series of rallies in the build-up to the much-publicized Uhuru Park meeting, the countdown is now down to just hours. But code leaders are still keeping the post-Saba Saba game plan close to their chests. Rita Tinina, KTN, Machakos.
And indeed, that is the focus of our discussion a little later on in this bulletin on Checkpoint. We're taking a look at the politics of it. And the hashtag to use on Twitter if you want to get in touch with us or leave us your feedback is hashtag Siasa Saba Saba. So please do keep your comments coming in as we gear up for Checkpoint in just a few moments. Now, with only hours to the much anticipated Saba Saba rally scheduled to take place tomorrow, Nairobi County Police Boss Benson Kibue has assured citizens the police have put their best foot forward in ensuring security at the rally and in the city. This as leaders and citizens from across the country continue to bear mixed feelings towards the event. Sharon Mamanyi now reports on a day that the opposition has vowed to push the government to the end in order to accept dialogue with them.
As the extensive preparations for the much-anticipated rally comes to a close, CORD leaders have maintained that peace will be maintained at the Uhuru Park rally scheduled for tomorrow.
Things are being done in the right way, as per the Constitution.
In a Sunday morning statement following a meeting between Nairobi Police Boss Benson Kibue and a section of ODM leaders, Kibue has assured Kenyans of a strong police presence at the venue.
There will be no problem. Please attend that rally, knowing that the CORD leadership is for peace.
Not without a strong warning to those intending to cause chaos.
Come unarmed, because we have mobilized so many police officers, and we have talked about the numbers in Nairobi. We'll not have less than 15,000 police officers. Those police officers will not harass anybody.
But even with a strong reassurance, a section of leaders across the country stand opposed to the Saba Saba rally. In Nakuru County, more than 30 MCAs marched around Nakuru town, urging residents to desist from violence and maintain peace during the period. They have also urged Nakuru and Naivasha residents not to move from the areas, citing intensified security.
Na watu tunasikia wanajaribu kuhama, hatujui wanahama kwa nini, lakini tumewaambia iko amani Nakuru, kila mtu sasa asiende kwao, tukae hapa.
In Murang'a County, Governor Mwangi wa Iria is among those that have implored citizens not to attend the rally. He has criticized CORD, saying it is misleading Kenyans.
Leo tumekuja kuongea biashara ya wakulima, biashara ya wafanyabiashara wale wengine. Si tunataka mikutano kama hii, si ndio? Sio mikutano ya kuja kuongea sijui mtu apewe nini, watu wapewe nini. Hiyo waambie wakija Murang'a hawataona hata mmoja wa hizo rally zao.
Citizens, local and religious leaders from other parts of the country have varying messages on the rally.
Saba Saba najua ni kama ni wakati wa conversation, wakati yenye watu wanakutana, wanaongea na kujadiliana.
Nilielewa Saba Saba kama maneno ya kusumbua tu serikali, sio ni kama iko na mwelekeo.
Wakazi wote wa Kitengela tunaomba endeni kwa soko siku hiyo, endeni kazini siku hiyo, sisi tutaenda kazini.
Kuna nguvu katika maneno, na yale maneno wanasema yanaweza leta ujenzi ama yanete kubomoa. Tunaomba kila neno itatumiwa iwe maneno ya hekima, maneno ya Mungu na maneno ambayo ni ya kujenga Kenya.
All this as the Communications Authority of Kenya, in a press statement, sent a warning to broadcast stations and the public with regard to hate speech. The statement partly reads that the constitutionally guaranteed freedom of speech does not extend to the spread of hate speech, propaganda for war, incitement to violence, among others. It further warns the public that the limitations to freedom of expression cited in the document also applies to the conduct of individuals or groups of persons in cyberspace. Sharon Momanyi, KTN.
And indeed, that remains the focus of our bulletin tonight. And to sort of give us an outside-looking-in perspective, as we like to call it, is Swiss Ambassador to Kenya, His Excellency Jacques Peterloo. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's start by taking a look at the events in the country. I mean, over the last few months, some would say over the last year, but specifically last night, when you hear about these attacks once again in Lamu and in Tana River, what is the diplomatic corps thinking about this situation in Kenya?
I don't know whether I can really speak in the name of the diplomatic corps, but something I can say for sure in their name is that we present our condolences and our sympathy for yet another group of Kenyans, innocent Kenyans that have been killed in senseless political violence. Now, yes, indeed, we are worried collectively, like I think every political observer in this country, and having seen let's say a similar situation before that ended up with a disaster. I was in Rwanda in 1994. I think that we are facing a very explosive situation. Wars always start for three reasons: mobilization, fear, and miscalculation. At the moment, we have the mobilization on all sides. We have fears, lots of fears. There are so many rumors. Of course, you are very, very aware of them, that, you know, this side is responsible for this attack, whatever. There will be provocations. And so people are afraid. And when people are afraid, they tend to overreact.
Okay. And, you know, you're talking about fear and, you know, we're talking about some of the situations we've seen. Of course, the West and the world to date is Rwanda. And people would say, well, we're making these comparisons. Aren't we spreading fear? But you've seen the worst of it in Rwanda. You know, some lessons to be learned to make sure we absolutely never ever get to that point?
The lessons to be learned are, first of all, not to create a situation where a spark could ignite the whole thing. And at the moment, if I'm looking at the developments of the last 3 weeks, indeed, the attack in Peketoni has opened quite a huge split in Kenyan society, and all the allegations around the attack in Peketoni. The reactions by both parts of the political divide have created this atmosphere of fear. And now it is time for responsible statesmen and women to take their responsibility and to calm down, especially for tomorrow. It is too late to stop the mobilization. The meetings will take place, and they should be what democratic meetings should be: people asserting their right to claim that they are not happy with the government, but within the boundaries of the constitution.
That being said, you have asked Raila and the CORD team to stand down from tomorrow's rallies. Why?
The idea is not, and it's certainly too late to ask to stand down, but one of the main aspects will be not to react to what could be perceived as provocations, and I'm sure that the government side should also refrain from any provocation, because if you have a couple of 1,000 or 100,000 people in the streets, a spark can ignite something really, really bad. It's time now to really cool down.
Your advice to both sides, I know you're saying cool down, but what are some of those specifics that both sides of the political divide can get into so that we, you know, have some calm restored in the country? Because there is that perception, everyone is on edge.
I was confronted the other day with somebody telling me that, you know, in Switzerland people demonstrate too. Yes, they do. They demonstrate, but if they have specific demands, the specific demands go through the channels that are put there by the constitutional rights. So there is indeed parliament, there are other means, and setting ultimatums in a situation where everything is very explosive is probably not the most intelligent thing to do.
All right, and just very quickly, you haven't, your government hasn't issued any travel advisories.
No, we haven't issued travel advisories. No.
And why is that when you take a look at the actions of some of your counterparts?
Because we think that, like the rest of the diplomatic community, we should stand by Kenya. Kenya is facing a very difficult moment, also with attacks from abroad, and by adding to the fears and by adding to the problems, especially of the Kenyan tourism industry, we are not helping this country.
Okay, all right. We thank you for your time, thank you for your support, and thank you for your insights into this. Obviously, having seen some of the worst that human beings can do to each other on this continent, it's important, I guess, to take a step back. And we thank you for your time and thank you for your insights into that. We've been speaking to His Excellency Ambassador, Swiss Ambassador to Kenya, that is His Excellency Jacques Peterloo, on the mood in the country at the moment and why we should all step back before we get ourselves into a crisis. Not fear-mongering, but perhaps just getting perspective on where we are in the country at the moment. Remember to keep your conversations and your feedback coming. This forms the basis of our bulletin tonight. Coming up on Checkpoint, the hashtag we're using, Siasa Saba Saba. Keep your feedback coming. Short break, we'll be right back. Welcome to Checkpoint, and your feedback 22155 is our SMS number. On Twitter, please use the hashtag Siasa Saba Saba. I'll be looking out for your comments. Let me introduce you to my guests this evening. We'll start with who would like to call the visitor to Checkpoint. Thank you for making the time. Patrick Ngatia, who's Director of Liaison, Office of the Senior Advisor Political Affairs at State House. We thank you for your time. We also have Edwin Sifuna, who's a regular with us now, Advocate of the High Court. Let's get into it very quickly. Endgame Saba Saba. Everyone's asking what happens on the 8th, on Tuesday morning. What is supposed to happen tomorrow? What happens when we wake up on Tuesday morning, Edwin?
Well, life continues on Tuesday morning, Yvonne. After the rally, people go home. From the understanding that I have gotten from the court leaders, just hearing them speak, is that Kenyans will pass certain resolutions on how they think the problems that are facing the country are to be addressed, and they will give their input on how they move those issues forward from tomorrow.
So input into that, and it's a normal day, so why all the hype around it? What are those resolutions and what does that lead to?
Well, it leads to action being taken on some of those issues. Even, for instance, the attack that happened today, I am sure the people down there now understand that they can no longer rely on the government to provide security for them. And sitting at home, I'm sure they are talking of ways in which they can better protect themselves as citizens, because these attacks keep happening and we keep talking and saying we're in control, but nothing is happening. So I expect that tomorrow Kenyans are going to voice their solutions as they see them to some of the problems that have been identified that have become quite critical.
Okay, we'll get into some of those in just a moment. Patrick, what are your views on what's happening tomorrow? Because I think there's quite a bit of anxiety surrounding that. And more specifically, middle ground was present. The IPPC, which was put together by Mutava Musimi and his team. Both CORD and Jubilee rejected that. Patrick, why? Why did Jubilee reject it?
I think the IPPC was not an initiative of either Jubilee or CORD. It was an initiative of some members of parliament who thought that they need to contribute to the current situation and be part of the story that is developing. But in terms of what we expect tomorrow and the days that we follow, I can tell you from where I sit, I agree with my friend Sifuna that we expect life will continue. The event of tomorrow is in Nairobi at Uhuru Park. It's not a national event. The biggest catchment of the people who will attend the rally, I believe, is going to come from Nairobi. We are in a devolved system of government. We have 47 counties. So if you ask what happens after tomorrow, I will tell you life will continue.
IPPC, though, was supposed to be that middle ground. Like you rightly put it, it was not an initiative of either CORD or Jubilee, but just some well-meaning members of parliament. Why did Jubilee not agree to this as a way to forestall perhaps the rally tomorrow?
First of all, as Jubilee, we do not believe that that CORD wants dialogue.
What does CORD want?
We don't know. They will tell us tomorrow. We are waiting to hear anxiously. Dialogue happens when there is a crisis or when there is war. And as a country, we have been down that path before. You remember in 2008, after the disputed presidential election, there was violence. And therefore, there was a crisis. And that is the time when we needed dialogue, and indeed it happened. And these people who are saying they want dialogue, they were part of that process.
So you don't believe there's a crisis in the country now?
There is no crisis. People are trying to create a crisis.
Edwin, no crisis?
The only issues we are having is we have insecurity right now. But insecurity has been there, and it has heightened. And for some reason, it is coinciding with this call for dialogue. And that is why people think there's a bit of politics in the insecurity that is happening. But as government, we will deal with it.
Well, Yvonne, for one to say that there is no crisis is actually to bury their heads in the sand, because as of last count, I believe we are almost doing the number of people who have died from the incidents of insecurity as of today. I think we have surpassed even the number of people who died during the post-election violence.
Is that a fact?
It is a fact. Do your math and just get the numbers from the time we had Westgate, even before Westgate, to today. We are almost reaching the 1,000+ people who were actually killed during the post-election violence. And for one to say there is no crisis, surely, even after what has happened today, we have seen more than 80 attacks from the day that we had the Westgate attack. So I think the question for this government is they should just give us a figure. Let us just sit back at home until we hit that figure. It is if it's 50,000 people dead before we can do anything about it, then we just sit back and wait until we get to 50,000. Then we can say, okay, as government, we have hit the figure. Now do you admit there's a crisis? Let's do something about it.
Some of the issues that court is raising, Patrick, including that of insecurity. They've also talked about inflation going up, I think, to about 7% as opposed to what it was in the preceding 12 months. The high cost of living, the IEBC is one that they've raised, which is another hot button issue. What is the government's plan in terms of taking a look at these issues? Because according to court, these issues are not being adequately addressed, including issues like corruption.
First of all, again, why I think there's a lot of politics surrounding this matter. And I'm not saying there's no crisis. Perhaps it's the English. I say there's a problem of insecurity, and the government is dealing with it. And that problem has not occurred yesterday or the day before or last week. The people who are killing citizens at the coast appear to be well-trained and well-armed. So that means that is possibly something that was happening even before this government came into power.
However, this government is now in power.
And we are dealing with a deep-rooted issue.
Okay, allow me to interrupt though, because you said the government is dealing with it.
Yes.
When Peketoni first happened, we had Cabinet Secretary Olelenku going there to conduct the operation. The night he was there, a second attack took place in a place that we would assume there's heightened security operation. This attack again happened. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of control going on. A number of attacks since Westgate being one of the biggest attacks we've seen, I think, since 1998. Would it be fair for some to say they're a little worried about how you're handling it or not handling it?
It is fair for people to be worried and to be concerned about the way it has been handled. But what I'm saying is that this appears now, when we do the dissection, to be a deep-rooted issue, that is not something that happened in the recent past. It is something that has been happening. Preparations have been going on, people have been training, acquiring weapons, and now they're just executing.
But
so we are not saying that we are going to wait for any period of time to act. The action is going on. Well, and I'm not allowed to, talk about what the government is doing, but something is being done. We are not sitting back.
I think for me, honestly, the actions that we've seen or the events speak for themselves. It is one thing for you to come and say we're in control, but the very same place you are speaking from, there is actually an attack next door. And for the government to say that they are doing this and we continue to see people losing their lives, I think it is being disingenuous. I have come to accept that governments the world over, they have a very low opinion of the collective IQ of the people that they govern, so that you will be told things that do not make sense even in the face of facts, but somebody insists that they are doing their job. And this issue of always looking back and saying these problems have been there or they have been ongoing. By the time somebody elects a different government to take over, we probably know the problems that we've had with the current government that we want to replace, that we are tired with double-speak, that we are tired with the inaction, and that is why we're giving this mandate to somebody else to actually do something about this particular problem.
Okay.
Yes.
And let's just then talk about Saba Saba, which is hopefully supposed to address these issues according to court. Again, calling it a consultative rally.
Yes.
we don't see much consultation happening. It's the leaders standing at the podium and addressing the crowd. At what point are they getting feedback from the people to which we will see a resolution that will happen tomorrow? How consultative are these rallies?
I think I have raised this point with you again before, because the problem is that our media today would want to focus more on what the leadership said and the statements that are coming out from the leaders themselves. But the truth of the matter is that wananchi are being given opportunities during these particular consultative meetings to actually say what it is that they want to see happen in issues that concern them on matters of the rising insecurity, the cost of living, all of those things. There's been feedback by wananchi, but it is highly unlikely that a cameraman, even from this station, would come back with a newsreel or an hour of wananchi speaking and miss out on what
So
Muhammad said.
how is it happening though? Because there's masses, hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes.
Just explain to us how the consultation
Of course, not everyone can speak at a rally like that.
Yes, but you know, are there appointments? You know, how does it happen? Does it happen behind the scenes? Does it happen before the rally?
It happens at the rallies. And you guys told me last time that you actually have video.
We do.
Yes.
Yes.
So I shouldn't really be getting those questions from you, because you've seen how it happens. It is a random selection in the crowd, and people are asked to give their opinions on the things that
Can't they do
concern
this
them.
through their members of parliament?
No, as in you can do that through your members of parliament, and that is the constitution actually allows you to do that directly. And coming back to the issue of IPPC, I think it is a demonstration of insincerity that we are seeing from both sides of the political divide, because one coalition has been saying that we need to do things through the established mechanisms pointing to parliament. Yet when there's a parliamentary initiative like the one that the Honorable Mutava Msimi put together,
Which court also rejected.
yes,
by the
but
way.
what was surprising was that it is okay for court to reject because they've already said that this is not a mechanism, they believe in it.
But it is
but
not
the
okay
guys,
for Jubilee
yes,
to
the
reject?
guys that are saying that this is where the forum, this is the forum that these issues should be addressed in, they were the first to come out and say that if this issue is about dialogue, the baby will not come out of the delivery.
What would be so wrong, Patrick, with sitting down with court?
I told you, I don't believe, and we don't believe as a government, that CORD wants dialogue.
But if you don't believe they want dialogue, you have to believe that there is something else that they do want.
My friend Sifuna has alluded a bit to that, because he is saying this government is unable to sort out the problems of Kenyans, and that is why they want to replace it. I think that is a hint.
I never said that.
But we don't believe they want dialogue, because I described for you dialogue. Dialogue does not include aspects of threats, ultimatums, deadlines, and people have to sit together and agree on the agenda. There has to be a mediator, a neutral person. And I said we have been through that path in the past, in 2008. And at that time, the PNU side of government had a team, the ODM side had a team. There was a mediator called Kofi Annan. If you remember, there was another mediator who had been suggested by ODM called Ramaphosa from South Africa. PNU rejected that mediator because they said he's afraid of the former prime minister, and therefore he will be biased. So the conditions for dialogue are known. And when you go and say, we are giving you a deadline of Saba Saba, and if Saba Saba lapses...
Though, Patrick, there was also a deadline when Kofi Annan was here. We had to get things moving because the country was at a standstill.
And the dialogue was already happening. The dialogue was already happening at that time. This time they are telling us that they want dialogue by this day. And if the dialogue does not happen by Saba Saba, they are on record as saying there will be no one to dialogue with after tomorrow. What is the meaning of that? What is the hidden meaning? And that is why I'm telling you, because we don't believe they want dialogue. There's something else they want. We are waiting for them to tell us that tomorrow.
One thing that is very surprising is my friend talking about the structures of dialogue as if they were never proposed. I remember when the first time that this issue or the idea for dialogue